On a peaceful afternoon within the confines of a Walmart parking area in Riverside County, a deputy fixated on a black man seated in a striking crimson sports car, asserting the vehicle matched the description of a recently stolen car report. What commenced as a routine inquiry into a suspicious vehicle would rapidly escalate into one of the most financially significant legal actions concerning racial bias the county had ever encountered, all because the individual behind the wheel was not who the deputy had presumed. He was, in fact, a judge. Before we delve any further, please share your current geographical location in the comments section and ensure you are subscribed, as tomorrow's narrative is one you absolutely will not want to miss. Deputy Caleb Rohr adhered to a well-established pattern, one that the department seldom discussed openly, yet was widely whispered about among all personnel within the building. Rohr did not merely scrutinize vehicles he deemed suspicious. He had a documented history of targeting black drivers, particularly when they were operating vehicles he deemed incongruous with their perceived status. 3 internal complaints had been lodged, 2 official warnings issued, yet no disciplinary action was taken. Each instance, according to reports, cited the same recurring issue: an unwarranted escalation during vehicle checks involving drivers from minority communities. And on this particular afternoon, his conduct deviated in no way from this established behavior. He was patrolling the Walmart parking lot following a rather vague alert from a dealership that had been transmitted through dispatch concerning a possibly red late-model sports car reported stolen. The alert itself lacked specific details, but Rohr required no such specifics. His attention was immediately drawn to a vivid red Talon X9 convertible parked near the shopping cart return. He promptly reduced the speed of his patrol SUV, his gaze fixed intently on the driver as if the judgment had already been rendered. The individual behind the wheel was Marcus Hale, a 52-year-old state judge en route home following a lengthy meeting in the city's downtown district. He had merely stopped at Walmart for the sole purpose of acquiring a replacement phone charger. He was still making minor adjustments to the air conditioning when he became aware of the patrol SUV gradually approaching him. Marcus exhibited no overt reaction. He had previously been approached without apparent cause. However, as the SUV angled towards him, rather than proceeding past, he instinctively understood what was about to transpire. Rohr disembarked from his vehicle carrying the same confrontational demeanor he displayed in every questionable stop he initiated. His shoulders were squared, his jaw set firmly, his hand hovering near his utility belt, scrutinizing Marcus as though he were assessing an imminent threat rather than an ordinary shopper. "Sir," Rohr began, his tone not a greeting, but a clear warning. Marcus maintained his hands in plain sight. "Is everything all right, officer?" Rohr bypassed the question entirely, his eyes fixated on the automobile. "That's a rather fine vehicle. Would you care to inform me how long you've possessed it?" Marcus raised an eyebrow at the phrasing of the question. It wasn't about the reason for the approach, nor his well-being, but a direct interrogation. "I'm merely here to do some shopping," Marcus stated calmly. "Is there an issue?" Rohr advanced closer, peering directly through the windshield. "We've received a report concerning a stolen sports car from the dealership located further up the road. It bears a striking resemblance to this one." Marcus kept his voice remarkably even. "This vehicle is not stolen." Rohr let out a smirking laugh, one of those dismissive expressions Marcus had observed numerous times from individuals who had already made up their minds about him before hearing any facts. "Would you mind stepping out so I can verify that?" There was a complete absence of courtesy, no explanation regarding the precise details of the alert, and no acknowledgement of the fact that the car displayed license plates and documentation clearly visible from his current vantage point. Before Marcus could formulate a response, Rohr leaned in, lowering his voice as if he were on the verge of uncovering a significant secret. "Drivers don't typically frequent this area in vehicles of this nature unless there's something amiss. Your license and registration, please." As this exchange unfolded, individuals walking past the Walmart entrance slowed their pace, sensing the rising tension but maintaining a respectful distance. Marcus deliberately reached for his wallet. "I will provide you with all necessary information, officer, but I would appreciate it if you would inform me of the specific reason for detaining me." Roar did not react favorably to this request. His posture immediately stiffened. "You fit the general description of an individual associated with a stolen vehicle." This assertion was demonstrably false, and both individuals were acutely aware of this fact. The initial alert had made no mention of race, age, or any specific identifier beyond a red sports car, yet Roar presented his suspicion as established fact. Marcus presented his identification. Roar briefly glanced at it, then let out a scoff. "Judge Hale? Seriously?" He held the ID between his thumb and forefinger as if it were a prop in a jest. "You expect me to believe this?" Marcus remained entirely unfazed. "That is, in fact, my profession." Roar shook his head. "You must assume I'm inexperienced. This appears to be a counterfeit. Exit the vehicle." The inherent unfairness of the situation was now undeniably apparent. Roar was not investigating the car based on the alert. He was investigating the driver because he perceived a mismatch between the alert and the individual, and in his mind, the two were irreconcilable. Around them, an increasing number of shoppers began to slow their movements. The raising of mobile phones became noticeable. Marcus exhaled audibly. "Officer, you are making an error." Roar took a step backward, his hand instinctively resting on his belt. "No, I believe you are the one making the error." Roar's initial suspicion did not abate. Instead, he took a deliberate step backward, his hand subtly moving towards his radio, while he continued to scrutinize Marcus as if searching for any crack in his composed demeanor. Passers-by continued to cast furtive glances, sensing that something was amiss. And when Roar finally activated his radio and reported that he had a driver presenting questionable credentials, the atmosphere in that Walmart parking lot underwent an instantaneous transformation. What should have been a straightforward verification was rapidly devolving into a considerably more charged encounter, and every observer present could feel the escalating confrontation intensifying with each passing second. Roar's voice crackled through the radio, his tone sharp enough to cause several shoppers to halt in their tracks. "Dispatch, I have a driver presenting questionable credentials, requesting immediate backup." He did not direct his gaze toward Marcus as he spoke. Instead, he returned his attention to the car, examining the wheels, the interior, every aspect except the man who had calmly handed him legitimate identification. Marcus maintained both hands in view on the steering wheel. He was not experiencing fear, but rather profound frustration. He clearly recognized the shift in the surrounding atmosphere. The stares, the hushed conversations, the gradual gathering of attention. A simple errand was transforming into a public spectacle, and he understood all too well how easily minor misunderstandings could spiral into something far more significant. Roar paced back and forth in front of the car, exhibiting a restless energy, as if he were undecided whether to circle the vehicle once more or engage Marcus directly. His behavior transcended mere suspicion. It was demonstrably about control. This was the very same pattern he had exhibited in previous stops: quick to assume, swift to escalate, and rapid to interpret uncertainty as defiance. "Sir," Marcus stated calmly, his voice steady, "I have provided you with my identification. You can verify it within mere seconds." Roar, however, disregarded the suggestion entirely, as if acknowledging it would signify a concession of ground. "You remain seated," he commanded curtly. "Backup is en route." A family exiting Walmart slowed their pace, observing from a distance. Two teenagers began to pull out their mobile phones. The tension was not overtly vocal, but it was palpable, settling into the air like a charged static. Marcus exhaled through his nose. "Officer, I would appreciate some clarity. What precisely about my credentials is questionable?" Roar spun around sharply. "You are remarkably composed for someone currently under investigation." "I am calm," Marcus replied, "because I am confident that I have done nothing wrong." Roar moved closer to the driver's side, his eyes narrowing. "You know, I've apprehended individuals in stolen vehicles who acted just as calmly as you. They also attempted to engage in clever conversation. I am cooperating, officer," Marcus stated. Yes, we shall see, Roar muttered. A small crowd was beginning to materialize, not substantial, but sufficient to make Roar feel observed, and being observed only served to heighten his tension. He adjusted his belt, repositioned his vest, and resumed pacing as if seeking some justification for the suspicion he had initiated. Inside the patrol SUV, Morales frowned at his screen. The car was not stolen. The registration matched. Marcus's judicial identification was confirmed against state records. Nothing was amiss. He exited the vehicle, approaching Roar with a look of evident uncertainty. Everything is checking out. Roar's jaw tightened. Run it again. I already have, Morales stated cautiously. It's clean. Roar turned back towards Marcus, his face contorted with frustration, not because something was wrong, but because nothing was. He had initiated the stop with unwavering confidence, but the facts were now decidedly against him. He leaned down towards Marcus's window one final time, his voice low. Are you suggesting that you just happen to be sitting in a car that precisely matches the description of a stolen vehicle, and it's all merely a coincidence? Marcus maintained his controlled tone. Officer, regardless of whether it's a coincidence or not, the system confirms the vehicle is not stolen, and you possess all the necessary verification tools. Marcus's composure irritated Roar more than anything else. His demeanor shifted once again. His shoulders became rigid, his breathing grew shallower, and his eyes darted between Marcus and the growing assembly of onlookers behind him. He was no longer simply suspicious. He was feeling challenged. Morales stepped forward, attempting to de-escalate the situation. Sir, everything appears to be in order. We should... Roar abruptly raised a hand. I am not finished. Morales hesitated, glancing from Marcus to the senior deputy. Even the bystanders could sense that Roar's insistence was irregular. Marcus spoke softly and deliberately. Officer, if all verification has been completed, may I be permitted to depart? Roar offered no verbal response. His silence was more profound than a mere pause. It was an act of resistance. He stared intently at Marcus, as if desperately searching for a reason to prolong the stop. More phones were raised. More shoppers observed. Morales cleared his throat. Caleb, perhaps we should... Roar cut him off. Step back. I said, I am handling this. And at the precise moment he placed his hand on the edge of Marcus's car door, as if preparing to escalate the situation further, the atmosphere in that Walmart parking lot tightened once more, becoming sharper, heavier, and significantly more volatile than before. Deputy Caleb Roar's hand rested on the edge of Marcus Hale's car door. But this was no longer about procedure, it was about asserting control. Backup had arrived, yet Roar did not retreat. He paced slightly, his shoulders rigid, his voice sharp, scrutinizing Marcus as if the man in the driver's seat had already confessed to wrongdoing. Marcus kept both hands clearly visible on the steering wheel. He remained calm, measured, and deliberate. Officer, I've complied with every request. I will not step out without lawful justification. Roar offered no reply. His behavior was not professional, it was defensive and territorial. He glanced at the bystanders filming with their phones as if their presence constituted a challenge to his authority. That perceived challenge only made him more rigid. He was no longer operating based on facts. He was acting on ego. You are sitting far too calmly, Roar stated, leaning slightly towards the window. Most people do not behave that way when they have committed an offense. I have done nothing wrong, Marcus replied evenly. I have provided my identification and the vehicle's status has been verified. Everything is in order, stated the deputy from the patrol SUV. Deputy Morales observed quietly. He was younger, cautious, and clearly growing frustrated by Roar's obstinance. Caleb, the vehicle is registered. The identification is legitimate. He's clear. Roar ignored him. His focus remained fixed on Marcus. You expect me to simply accept that at face value? Far too many individuals deceive others and feign innocence. Morales moved closer, attempting to maintain a calm demeanor. We can verify this without exacerbating the situation. Roar straightened. I am verifying it. This is my stop. The palpable tension drew the attention of every shopper in that section of the parking lot. Phones were raised. Whispers circulated amongst the crowd. People paused, pushing their shopping carts, uncertain of what might happen next. Marcus's tone remained steady. "Officer, all verification has been completed. You are now detaining me without justifiable cause." Roar's face tightened. He was frustrated, irritated, and desperately trying to retain control. "Step out of the car." "I cannot do that," Marcus stated calmly. "Because there is no lawful reason," Morales interjected again, his voice firm. "Caleb, the stop is concluded. He has fully complied. Allow him to leave." Roar's response was to ignore Morales and repeat, "Step out of the car." At this juncture, Roar's conduct crossed the threshold into outright escalation. His movements became stiff, almost performative, as he gripped the car door, paced intermittently, and spoke in a manner intended to assert dominance rather than ensure safety. He was no longer reacting to facts. He was responding to perceived challenges emanating from Marcus, the assembled crowd, and even Morales. Marcus exhaled slowly, maintaining his composure. "Officer, this interaction is concluded. You possess no justification to continue." Roar hesitated for a fleeting second, then reached for his radio. "Dispatch, I require additional units. Possible non-compliance." That call heightened the gravity of the situation considerably. The crowd condensed. Phones zoomed in for closer shots. The Walmart parking lot, once an ordinary scene, now resembled a public standoff. Morales placed a gentle hand on Roar's arm. "Enough. Step back. The stop is complete." Roar flinched, then shook off the touch. He glanced at the crowd, then at Marcus, his face a mask of frustration. He was not receptive to reason. He was defending his authority. Marcus remained seated, his hands visible, his voice calm. "Officer, I have fulfilled all requirements. Any further action on your part is unwarranted." Another shopper muttered under their breath. "He's following the law. Why won't the officer?" Roar's jaw clenched. He looked at Marcus, then at the arriving backup deputies, and finally back at the growing crowd. His posture was tense, indicative of readiness for confrontation, but the law and the facts were now decidedly against him. The officer's behavior had transitioned from mere suspicion to outright aggression, later documented as a clear instance of authority misuse. Morales subtly shook his head and stepped back. He stayed close to Marcus, adopting a protective yet restrained stance, allowing Roar's conduct to speak for itself. The stalemate persisted for moments that felt considerably longer. Phones meticulously recorded every second. The palpable tension in the Walmart lot was undeniable. Roar's unwavering insistence on control, his refusal to acknowledge presented evidence, and his rigid defensive stance had transformed a routine parking lot check into a public confrontation. Finally, Roar took a step backward, gripping his radio tightly. Marcus remained seated, maintaining his calm demeanor, seemingly unthreatened. The officers and the gathered crowd tacitly understood that the stop had effectively concluded. However, Roar's behavior had already set in motion events that would undoubtedly carry significant repercussions. The aftermath of the confrontation in the Walmart parking lot commenced almost immediately. Within an hour of the incident's resolution, bystanders had uploaded footage from multiple perspectives of the encounter, brief clips, complete recordings, and compiled sequences showcasing Deputy Roar's handling of the stop from the very moment he approached the vehicle. The videos disseminated rapidly, gaining considerable traction across social media platforms, where viewers were quick to highlight the deputy's refusal to verify information that had already been definitively confirmed. Local news reporters became aware of the situation that same evening. A few recognized the name Judge Marcus Hale and immediately grasped the profound significance of the event. This was not merely another questionable traffic stop. This was an encounter involving a sitting state judge with decades of courtroom experience and a well-earned reputation for impartiality. For many viewers, it was not the judge's status that ignited their outrage, but rather the stark imbalance of power vividly displayed in the recordings and the manner in which the officer escalated a situation that should have been resolved in a matter of seconds. Marcus did not delay for days or weeks to respond. He took action within hours. Upon returning to his residence, he contacted his legal counsel and meticulously gathered every available piece of evidence. His request for body cam footage, witness testimonies from shoppers, and the videos that were already circulating online. He possessed an intimate understanding of the law, as profound as anyone's, and he recognized that the only effective way to counter the abuse of authority was through meticulous documentation and strategic pressure. By the following morning, national news outlets had picked up the story. Headlines boldly highlighted the glaring contradictions: a judge with verified federal credentials detained in a parking lot by an officer who adamantly refused to confirm them. Analysts meticulously replayed the footage frame by frame, noting each procedural misstep: the unnecessary summoning of backup, the aggressive commands issued subsequent to full compliance, and the outright refusal to acknowledge identification that had already been unequivocally proven as legitimate. Concurrently, the sheriff's department began to feel the mounting pressure. They issued a concise statement acknowledging the incident and announcing an internal affairs investigation. The statement was brief, generic, and conspicuously avoided any assumption of direct responsibility. However, the public remained unsatisfied. Viewers drew parallels between this incident and Rohr's documented history of problematic conduct, patterns that were now being openly discussed across the internet. He had been involved in numerous stops where his actions escalated situations without any apparent justification. The Walmart encounter, quite simply, was the one that finally achieved widespread national exposure. Judge Hale formally submitted his lawsuit later that same week. The claim sought a total of $13.2 million, citing unlawful detainment, racial profiling, severe emotional distress, and professional damages. However, the lawsuit extended beyond mere financial compensation. It brought to light deeper, systemic issues within the department, highlighting a pattern of repeated misconduct that had consistently gone unchecked. Legal experts observed that the case held the potential to establish a significant precedent for civil rights litigation involving public officials. As the investigation progressed, additional witnesses came forward. Some recounted observing the entire confrontation unfold and expressed their unease regarding the alarming speed with which it escalated. Others admitted they initiated recording because something felt fundamentally wrong the moment Rohr's tone shifted. Their testimonies precisely corroborated the visual evidence captured on the footage. Marcus was consistently calm, cooperative, and compliant throughout the entire interaction, while the officer persistently pushed the situation in a direction that defied all logical reasoning. Internal investigators interviewed Rohr on multiple occasions. Subsequent reports indicated that his statements were characterized by inconsistency and heavily emphasized his subjective gut feeling rather than adherence to established policy. He steadfastly maintained that the sports car did not align with the typical vehicle one might expect a judge to drive, a statement that analysts immediately identified as demonstrably biased and unprofessional. He also reiterated his assertions regarding questionable credentials, despite the fact that dispatch had already confirmed the judge's identity during the course of the confrontation. The county had encountered legal challenges in the past, but this particular case presented a distinct set of circumstances. The confluence of a high-profile victim, irrefutable video evidence, and the officer's undeniably problematic behavior rendered it exceedingly difficult to dismiss or downplay. Negotiations commenced discreetly behind closed doors. Public pressure, meanwhile, intensified with each passing day, compelling the sheriff's department to address concerns they had previously disregarded. During community forums, residents vociferously demanded answers. They questioned how an officer with a documented history of questionable stops remained on active duty. They inquired as to why fundamental verification protocols were so blatantly ignored, and they sought an explanation for why a judge was treated as a suspect despite his complete compliance at every step. Local elected officials exerted pressure for enhanced training protocols, more stringent oversight mechanisms, and disciplinary measures that extended beyond mere paid administrative leave. Marcus maintained his composure throughout the entire aftermath. He continued to fulfill his regular judicial responsibilities in court, steadfastly refusing to allow the incident to compromise his professional integrity. When he finally addressed the public, he chose his words with deliberate care. He emphatically stressed that authority inherently carries significant responsibility and that any misuse of that authority could not be tolerated or overlooked. He stated unequivocally that he sought no special preferential treatment simply because he was a judge. His fundamental desire was for equal treatment as a citizen. His statement resonated deeply with the public. People understood that this case was larger than any single individual. It was about demanding accountability from those entrusted with upholding the law. It was about proactively preventing future occurrences where compliance is disregarded and suspicion arbitrarily supersedes established procedure. As the lawsuit proceeded through the legal system, discussions surrounding reform gained considerable momentum. Advocates frequently cited the Walmart incident as a prime example in various forums, panel discussions, and crucial training seminars. Law enforcement departments across the nation undertook reviews of their own verification processes, underscoring the paramount importance of de-escalation techniques and the inherent dangers associated with acting on mere assumptions. With Deputy Rohr at the heart of the unfolding events, he found himself under a microscope. During the ongoing inquiry, he was temporarily taken off active duty. His conduct underwent rigorous examination, intense deliberation, and sharp critique from experts within both the legal and public safety sectors. It was evident that the subsequent developments would significantly influence not only his professional trajectory, but also wider discussions concerning policing protocols and public confidence. For individuals closely tracking these events, the takeaway was straightforward. When instances of overreach by those in authority are documented, remaining quiet is no longer a viable response. Should you feel that the improper exercise of power ought to be consistently revealed and confronted, please share your thoughts in the comments section, ensure you're subscribed, and keep watching for further authentic accounts that necessitate a reckoning.